Well, good morning and welcome, everybody. We've got an interesting broadcast for you this morning, and we're talking today about digital transformation and what's powering it. So in today's show, we're going to have a look at artificial intelligence and big data and how these interrelate and what makes a successful digital transformation. Now, we've got a couple of really exciting guests for you on today's show, and I'll introduce them to you in a sec. But both of these gentlemen are really interested in digital transformation and, in fact, all things digital. And I think today, if you would like to ask questions, you can see the QR code is on screen at the moment. Just scan the QR code. That will take you straight to the little application that we use for questions and answers, and we'd be happy to take your questions today as well. You don't have to put in a register or anything like that. You just need to put in your name, and you can ask whichever questions to the panel that you feel might be appropriate on the topic of digital transformation, AI, and big data. So without further ado, let's take a look at introducing our guests this morning. And the two guests that we have for you today are Johann Botha. He is the CEO of getITright. He's very much a digital change specialist and has been working in this field in service management for many years. And welcome, Johann. And Etienne Shardlow as well. Etienne is the same, also digital change specialist, and also has been a partner of APMG for many years. So I'd like to welcome both of our panelists to today's show. Would you like to say a few words, Johann?
Yeah, Nigel, thank you very much for inviting me to take part in the conversation. As you said, I've immersed myself in the world of business agility and digital transformation for the last few years, and it's exciting to be able to have a chat about it.
Wonderful. Thanks, Johann. Etienne, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, also, thank you very much for the opportunity. It's good to be here, and it's great to be able to share some thoughts on such exciting topics as digital transformation and how AI can assist with making real change.
Absolutely.
So, good to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Etienne. Absolutely. And I think that these three topics, Ty, are very closely interrelated. So without further ado, let's take a look at some of the questions that have been coming in. To kick us off today, I've entered a question as well. So this question is, what is digital transformation and what does it mean for today's business leaders? Johann, would you like to take a tackle at answering that one?
Yeah, I think that's actually a very important question to start with, because unfortunately there's so many initiatives that's been punted as digital transformation initiatives that's not digital transformation at all. And in fact, we're actually starting to talk about business transformation rather than digital transformation. Yeah, Tim Woodhouse said that digital transformation is about making beautiful butterflies, not fast caterpillars. And I think that's what people need to understand is, if your business is not different afterwards, you haven't transformed. Yeah. So of the two words in the concept, transformation is more important than digital. That being said, though, is that it's really difficult to be able to transform at scale and at pace if you don't utilize what I call game changers. And AI and big data are two massive game changers that helps organizations to be able to transform themselves at scale.
Thanks, Johann. I agree with you there. I think that both digital transformation really cannot be successful without knowing the correct data and having the facts at your fingertips. And I think artificial intelligence, on the other hand, can be very helpful in manipulating and using that data. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
I mean, the list of game changers keeps on changing, but for the last 5-10 years, AI and big data analytics has remained on the list. Yeah. So if you think about other technologies like cloud, for instance, it's not so much of a game changer anymore. Yeah. It's become and I think that's the issue. You know, the moment a digital enabler or a game changer becomes commonplace, it's no longer a differentiating factor. Yeah.
Agreed. Etienne, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, so what Johann said about transformation being the key word in digital transformation, I think, and the example of cloud, cloud was a game changer, but it isn't anymore. And I think the digital part of digital transformation is happening to us by default. It happens whether we like it or not. Transformation is our choice. We choose to transform. And if we don't transform, we're going to get left behind.
I agree with
digital is going to happen to us whether we like it or not.
Absolutely. And I think that, many organizations today have digital transformation put down as part of their corporate strategy, right? But I wonder how many of them really understand what it actually means.
Yes, absolutely.
So, let's take a look at the next question that's come in. And I think this one is quite interesting. What actually is big data? Many people don't really understand the concept of what big data is. And I think more importantly, how it relates to your digital transformation and of course, AI. Etienne, would you like to take a crack at answering that one for us?
Yeah, so I heard a very interesting definition of big data, and it said basically any amount of data that you can't fit in an Excel spreadsheet. So, but big data is really all of the information that we're collecting from all sorts of sources. We've got so much data and so much information all around us, and big data is about collecting the information that is most relevant to us. And I think that's the key. We've got to make good decisions on good data. And if we're collecting all of the data, we need to then make sure that we are managing that data properly so that we can make good decisions. And big data enables trending and all sorts of things. It helps us understand customer behavior. It understands the behavior of the marketplace in which we're operating. It also helps us understand how our business operates a little better. And so it can be used to kind of help us understand the situation that we're faced with so that we can transform. And I think that's the key thing. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I think that using artificial intelligence in combination with big data makes those decisions a little bit more clear, right?
Yes, and often the machine learning and the AI can help us pick up trends and where the data might be skewed in a way that humans can't always easily identify. That's the thing with big data. There's just so much information that it's very hard for someone, a person, to be able to take all of that information in and identify the trends, whereas a machine can process those massive amounts of data in a way that people can't.
Very true.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the thing is also that we need to remember business is a complex adaptive system. And the issue is, for me, actually less the amount of data than the inability of people to be able to process so much fast enough so that we can make decisions. Because in the past, 20 years ago, you could take 6 months to come up with a new marketing strategy and check what the market is doing, and you can't do that today. You have to respond much quicker. So it's really about building that the ability within the business to be responsive, to be, if not first, at least in front, in terms of your decision making.
I agree with that. And I think that's probably also where agility comes into it, both business agility and normal, agility in your projects and programs.
Yeah. And I think that the thing with agility that we just need to bear in mind, that agility is not necessarily agile. Agile as in, agile, give it a name. Yeah. And the thing is, agile, give it a name doesn't work if you don't have agility in terms of thinking first. So that really must come first.
Yeah. I think those are very, very valid points. So another interesting question here, and I think we could probably talk about this one for hours, but what are the barriers that usually block the path to your digital transformation? Johann, do you want to kick off with that one?
There's so many. I think the easiest one to address is to just realize that every tech initiative is not digital transformation. Okay, so stop calling it that. But the question is, why do we want to transform? And I think many organizations hasn't even asked themselves that fundamental question. And the reason for transformation is because our customers want different stuff and they behave differently. Yeah. So for me, if you don't understand your consumer landscape exceptionally well, you will most probably come up with an initiative that's going to not work, or if you're lucky, work below par. So I think that's the beginning one. And then the second one that's very closely linked to it is the fact that if you understand your consumer landscape, you need to actually re-strategize. Because if your organization's strategy doesn't support any transformational initiative, whether it's digital or otherwise, it's most probably going to fail. Yeah, it starts at the top. It starts with a vision, with a purpose, and everything that you need to do needs to be aligned to that. You need to hone in. Yeah.
Agreed. Etienne, what are your thoughts on that? What in your experience are the kind of common barriers that you've come across?
I think that not understanding your reason why is always going to get in the way. If you don't understand why you're doing something, then you don't understand your purpose, and then you can very easily go off track. And the problem is we have our reasons why, we have our purpose, but the world is changing so rapidly and our customers are changing so rapidly that we need to be able to adapt. We need to be agile, and again, not the name agile, but, being agile, being responsive. And if we don't have a clear purpose and understand where we're going to, then we can't dodge the potholes in the road on the way there. Yeah. And that's what agility and responsiveness is about. It's about responding quickly to the changing world around us while heading in that ultimate direction of your purpose. And I think if you don't have that right, then you don't understand the reason for your transformation, and then you're gonna stumble.
Yeah.
And you're going to struggle to make good decisions with bad data or bad information. Actually, it's not the data that's important; it's the information.
Correct.
So technology is important. Don't negate that, but don't get hung up with a bright shiny thing. And I think that's what too many of us is doing. We're focusing on the tech instead of the why.
And if you don't have a good reason why, you can very easily make bad decisions with good data. So it's
absolutely.
Yeah.
So this is a double-edged sword, in fact, when you think about it. Yeah. And I think that sort of just holds true as to why you really do need those data analytics in place. And I think the capturing of the sources of data need to be the appropriate and correct sources for your business. Otherwise you aren't capturing the correct trends that you're looking for. You don't know what the market is doing, and you're probably using the wrong viewpoints of that data, which is where AI comes in. At least it can give you that from the normal viewpoints. Yeah, very good point. You guys have anything else to add on this question before we move to the next one?
There's I think I'm happy to move on.
Okay. So this is an interesting one. So what are the top challenges facing AI and big data experts today? Very interesting question.
Yeah, I'd like to dive in there.
Please do.
And I think it talks to some of the points we were making just now, whereas we said you can't make good decisions with bad data. And there's so much information and so much data out there. We need to make sure that we have proper data management in place. So it's not just about collecting all of this information and trying to make sense of it. It really is about understanding what is good data, what is bad data. In the past, we used to talk about garbage in, garbage out. And one of the big concerns with AI is there is questions of bias. So we are often using historical data sets that have a lot of human biases built into those data sets. And we're finding situations now where machine learning and AI is making decisions and identifying trends that aren't really trends. They're trends that are coming or showing up in the data based on historical biases.
Right.
And I think that's
That is
one of the big challenges we face with big data, especially when we're using historical data sets.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I can imagine that would be the case.
So your past spreadsheets and reports is not data. That's
Yeah.
already been processed. And that's where the bias basically comes in. So,
Yes.
but organizations are sitting with tons of raw data that they don't utilize. When we talk to customers about, that first part of the answer of why digital transformation, and we ask them questions about their customers and their customers' behavior and how the response in terms of what they need to do with their different products or services. Most organizations, they grab that spreadsheet, that's already been processed, the sales report. And actually, if we dive into the raw data, we come up with some really, really interesting answers. And sometimes it just takes somebody to ask the right questions, without having a preconceived idea of what the reality in the organization is.
Yeah. I think that you've hit the nail on the head there. A preconceived idea of what reality is, and having the willingness to change that idea. That's probably a really important element to the success of your transformation.
Here's the awesome thing about data. You can't argue against it. So if you can come up with the right data that's not biased, people can't argue against that. And that's where algorithms isn't new. I mean, most of these things that we use in terms of data analytics is it's come from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and I think it's just that we've got the ability to use it better now, and use it to understand this complexity of this animal that we call an organization, or a market for that matter, even more complex.
Much more complex. It's a good point. Etienne, do you have anything else to add on those challenges?
No, not really, but it's an interesting point about the algorithms that we're using being, older. Is we're just using the same algorithms, we're just using them faster.
True.
So we can process more data, more quickly, but the algorithms haven't really changed much.
No, I agree with you. And none of this in the sense is future looking, is it? Because data is always in the past.
Yeah.
So exactly.
Yeah, but it's amazing what you can learn from history if you're willing not to look through a specific lens.
Very, very good point. Yeah. And I think that's one of the challenges that, I'd like to mention is folks or business leaders specifically trying to fit their data trends that they're seeing coming out of their AI and big data analysis into a specific mold, which is their preconceived idea of where they think the business should be going, So they use it to rationalize. And I don't think that works very well. As you say, you need to have that open mind.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, here's another interesting question from Peter. Where should business leaders start with digital transformation? I guess this is the horse and cart or chicken and egg discussion again. But
I don't think it's actually that difficult. You have to start with understanding your customers, and if you understand the demand side of the cycle, it's much easier to think about what you're going to do on the supply side. So the list for me is understand your customers, understand their why also for using your products, not what they tell you. Understand them intimately. Understand what they do with what's the job that they hire your product or service to do for them. And if you've got that insight, then you can reevaluate in line with your purpose, the future direction of the organization, and you can quite easily identify initiatives where your organizations need to transform. It's much easier to change if there's a good reason to change, and nobody can argue against that reason.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
And incidentally, Jim Collins said that good is the enemy of great. And I can't remember who said it, but somebody else had something similar. They say change is the enemy of transformation. So don't be fooled because you're busy with many initiatives into thinking that you're busy transforming. That's not the case.
Yeah, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Etienne, do you have any thoughts on where people should start with their transformation?
Yeah, again, try not to start with the tools and the techniques, and you've got to start with understanding why. And again, understand why you're in business, who your customers are, because the customers are the reason why you're in business. And if you know what your customers want, and as Johann said, it's not about what they're asking for. If you think about all of our fairy tales and children's stories, there's so many of them that are based around people asking for something but meaning something else.
Meaning something else, exactly.
Yeah, and so they always say be careful what you ask for, and that's what we've got to be careful of. We can't deliver to our customer what they're asking for. We've got to ask what they meant to ask for, and so often it's through the data that we can pick that up.
Yeah,
rather than through the questions. Yeah,
I agree.
So
with
maybe
you.
asking the right questions again.
Absolutely, and asking it to the right audience also. So don't ask your sales team about your customers. They don't know, quite honestly. If you want to know about your customers, go and speak to your customers. Go and speak to users within your customer organization. And combine it then with the trends that you see in terms of the use and the sale of your products and services. And if you, for instance, in our type of industry, if you develop software, build in the instrumentation into the software to actually see what behavior of users are. That's not personal data because you anonymize it, but understand how people use the tools that you provide them. Because that is a good indication for you to understand where the value is. Their why for your product.
Indeed. I think the takeaway sorry, go ahead, Etienne.
Yeah, just one more point on that. In service management, we always used to talk about the difference between the customer and the user. And the customer ordering the service, but the user is the one who's actually using it. And to really know what's valuable, you have to speak to the user of the service rather than the person ordering the service.
Yeah, exactly.
So even don't speak to your salespeople, speak to the customer, but one step further than that, don't speak to the customer, speak to the person who actually uses it.
Totally agree with you there. Now, I think a big takeaway from this little discussion is it's so critical to understand your business and your market and how people are using those services rather than getting focused or too focused on the tech side of digital transformation. Okay. The tech side is really just the tool side that's providing you with some data or all the data you need, in fact, to be able to make the correct decisions. But a lot of folks I've found seem to focus on the tech and think they're doing digital transformation. They're not. They haven't actually understood the real reason behind it. So,
I'm a big Simon Sinek fan, and I'm glad Etienne keeps on using the word why. It's the most important word in life.
It is. And this question, I think, is extremely interesting. And I guess it also will be probably a critical element of the success of your transformation. And that is what culture and changes really are needed, for a successful digital transformation. So, Johann, do you want to kick us off with that, and then we'll come to you, Etienne?
Sure. That's a really difficult question because It's so broad. The thing that we need to bear in mind is that we said something is not transformative unless it changes the way that you do things. And that immediately puts the organizational immune system on the defense. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, so what we found quite often is that it's better to start with really disruptive type of behavior within the organization in an environment where you can utilize the organization's resources, but you purposefully exclude the organization's control. Because people use the controls within an organization as a defense mechanism and as a reason why they shouldn't change. Yeah. And I think that's the one thing. The second thing is don't try and do everything at once. Evolutionary change is always easier and better than revolutionary change. My golly. And then the last thing is involve everyone. And I think that's most probably a difficult one in many organizations, because being able to build a quick response to things that's busy happening in your environment. Business agility means flatter decision-making structures, less hierarchy, broader involvement, cross-functional work, and in many organizations, culturally, that is really, really difficult. So if it doesn't come from the top of the organization, you're most probably going to struggle. And I think the digital transformation conversation is really a leadership conversation first, because there's so much that needs to change from the way that we manage people, that leadership drives the organization forward, behavior within the organization. It is really, really complex. So if you are doing a digital transformation project that's going well with no people issues, it's most probably not transformative.
Probably not. Probably not. And I would actually argue that you aren't going to really be that successful with your digital transformation without putting effective organizational change management in place first.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And that, change is about attitude. There are lots of change management techniques. I hate to use that word techniques, but techniques that we can use to change attitude and behavior in a non-manipulative fashion. I don't like things that sort of, you don't want change to happen to you. Yeah, that makes it uncomfortable.
Nobody likes that.
Yeah,
it's a good point. Etienne, do you have anything to add on the culture side?
Yeah, I think stakeholder engagement is key. As Johann said, you've got to get everyone on board. You've got to get everyone involved. And I think the big thing with digital transformation is that it's not the tools, it's not the techniques, it's a mindset. It's a shift in behavior, mindset, the way we think about stuff. That's what needs to change here. The tools, the techniques, you can use tools, for the wrong purpose. You can use a hammer to the back of a hammer to pull a screw out, for example, but that's not the right tool for the job, and we've got to make sure that we change our mindset so we're using the tools in the right way.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So very interesting discussion, gentlemen. I really appreciate you both taking the time to join today. Unfortunately, we're pretty much coming up to the end of the time slot that we have. So I just wanted to say thank you once again, and look on this space for more. We hopefully will be doing a few more shows along this line, and we're trying to keep them relatively short so that we give you enough information. Before we close, just want to say, you've noticed there's some QR codes on screen at the moment, and if you scan those codes, it'll take you to the APMG pages on AI and digital transformation, obviously information and big data. So please take a look at that. There's a wealth of information on the site. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, because there's much more content like this available for you right there. And in case you missed it, we did a little special interview with Etienne on artificial intelligence a little while back, which is very related to this topic. So please feel free to take a look at that one as well. So before we close, gentlemen, Johann, do you have any final closing remarks for the audience?
I'm gonna steal Etienne's thunder. Understand your why before you do anything else.
Yeah. Understanding the why is critical. Absolutely. Thank you, Johann. Etienne, any final closing remarks from you?
I think it just ties back into the last question, and just understanding that digital transformation is more of a culture and a mindset shift than anything else.
Yeah.
And if you understand that, and thanks for stealing my thunder, Johann, if you understand why,
that's exactly correct.
Without a purpose and without that mindset change, it's not going to work. So get those things right first.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining the show, and we'll close off now, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Nigel.
Bye.
Thank you.